My name is Dr. Maithili Ganju. I'm a professor of advertising in Manav Rachna, Faridabad. Welcome students to today's lesson. Today we are going to discuss about media planning, a yet another important function in an agency. Media planning is a systematic process to arrive at the best method to convey the advertiser's message to a market, which is the consumers, by choosing a combination of media vehicles so that the communication is effective and goes to a larger number of consumers at a lower cost. What is important to understand when we talk of media planning is to see that the entire exercise is cost effective in the sense that it leads to larger number of people, but at a cost which is not so high. This is because media as such, we know, is a very expensive affair. So planning as a process becomes something that has to be researched, has to be thought out strategically so that we are able to get the reach to the maximum people who listen to the advertiser's message, but at the same time, it is a cost-effective venture. Before we proceed further to understand planning, let me see where we situate the planning process in the entire campaign development. We know that the campaign starts when you win a certain pitch, when an advertising agency wins a pitch, and then it gets down to developing a strategy. This strategy is what leads to the making of the creative, and once the creative production is done, which is when we have the advertisements and the messages ready, either in terms of being TVCs or being print ads or being any other format, then the media planning steps in, because this is the time when the media planner suggests which particular vehicle, which particular medium is suited to carry the message and in which form. That process, dear learners, is media planning is all about, and media planning and then placing that media in the right environment where most people are able to grasp the meaning, which is what we mean by saying, communication which is effective. Communication is effective when people actually listen to it rather than just go bypass it. So it is at that stage that media planning becomes important. Therefore, if we look at this slide that I have put up, you will see that developing a media plan is a process which takes into being the marketing plan, the marketing strategy plan. It looks at the creative that has been done because of that marketing objective, and then there is some sort of research that the planner, the media planner himself has to do, especially in terms of understanding the market, in terms of understanding the consumer to whom the message is going to go, so that the selection of the proper media is possible. Within this media plan comes an important part which is called the media strategy, which is understanding how the objectives will actually be fructified in reality, and then the choice of the media, and not only just the choice, but when will that media actually be viewed, will be actually seen, will actually be heard, depending on the vehicle that we are looking at. So this selection is also a very important aspect of how the media planner plans out the entire delivery to the consumer. So moving ahead, I think it's better that we start with understanding some concepts. First important thing that a media planner has to know about is media habits. Now, media habits really are about how and when do people consume media. In today's time, that seems like a very, very simple question, because when do we not consume media? Right from the time that we are awake till we go off to sleep, we are surrounded by media all over. Yet, being surrounded by media and actually listening to media are two different things. And that is what the media planner has to point out in order to make an effective plan. Therefore, understanding media habits is going to mean that we first know how to have a segmentation in terms of who consumes media, how do youngsters consume their media, which are the vehicles they choose, what is the kind of time that they choose, and what are they listening to. Similarly, when we look at other roles and other people of different age groups, different geographical areas, they would have a different media consuming habit. And over a period of time, as we have been researching and trying to understand these habits, there is now a kind of set understanding, at least of certain basic ground rules regarding media habits. For example, we know that for children, media consumption really happens in the evening when they are back from the school. Or we know that youngsters are night birds these days. So a lot of media consumption actually happens in the night time for youngsters. So these are broad categories of our understanding that has come out of the media research. The next thing is media mix. Media mix is using a combination of different media, because as I said, we are these days surrounded by so many mediums at the same time. So what happens is that I may get a message on my WhatsApp, and I may have a message on my on a outdoor while I'm driving, and I may have a message that comes in a commercial which I'm viewing when I'm in my free time. So which particular vehicle is going to tell me what is my mindset when I'm looking at my WhatsApp, what's my mindset when I'm watching a television. These are the kind of nuances that are kept in mind when a planner is making the media plan. Most important concepts to know is the reach and the frequency. So reach is how many people do we go to. As said earlier, media is a very expensive affair. It costs a lot to have an ad coming out on the television. It costs a lot to have a print ad. Therefore, whenever the advertiser wants to reach out, has to be very careful. The planner has to be very careful, the agency has to be very careful to see that the money and the money share is allocated in such a way that maximum number of people are reached at the same time, and the cost is something that is taken care of. So reach is this whole concept of one relay, which is an expensive relay, and how many people have I caught. So again, we will go back to the understanding how many people, as in how many people who just see it, how many people who actually retain it. So that kind of mathematical understanding is very important when we are looking at the reach aspect of media. Frequency is how many times. So, as I said, if something is being shown and I'm only looking, but it is shown twice and thrice, it is going to catch my attention, or it is going to catch me at a time when I am more alert to the exposure to the media, and my retention would then be that of somebody who is watching it with attention. Therefore, frequency is also very important. So, how many people have you reached and how many times have you reached? So that from just being lookers, they become consumers of the media. Next, we come to the concept of media scheduling. Now, media scheduling is a next step of reach and frequency that a media person has to think about. Scheduling is really a proper planned manner in which a certain vehicle of media, like say broadcast, say television, is seen in terms of proper time. So you make a schedule in order to reach and in order to have the frequency, you make a proper schedule for a month of a given program within a particular channel, and say that this is the kind of exposure I am giving in the evening slot from 5 to 6 when people are actually watching. So the scheduling is a detailed planning of how you justify the reach and how you justify the frequency. So when in this case, if we take an evening slot and we say we are targeting school children or children who are watching a program on the television, then we know roughly that there is an X number of children who watch this program. We come to know about it through the TRPs. We have ways of finding that figure also. So we say so many number of children are caught in this hour, that is our reach. And when we are going to be telling them the same message thrice or every day for about 2 months, that means they would have seen it at least 8 times or 8 into 4, 24 times. Therefore, we are able to understand the reach and the frequency is going to have a certain impact, and that reach and frequency we are going to schedule in a proper way. That is what media scheduling is, a very important task of a media planner. And thereafter we come to budgeting. As I told you, for a media planner, money is very important consideration, because the money usually from a client comes it's not sort of indefinite. There is a proportion of money that is being spent, and this money has to be budgeted in such a way that it is able to give maximum efficient media mix, that it is going to make the impact on the consumer in a way that is going to be beneficial to the brand. So therefore, recapitulating quickly and now getting a little bit into the depth of what a media plan making is all about, we will concentrate on 4 important aspects. First is, as I said, the situation analysis. It is something where we identify who our market is, how are we going to talk to that particular consumer. Then we are going to set the objectives, which is the media objectives. Exactly what are we trying to do? What is the kind of impact that we are trying to make on this market through our strategy? Then we move to developing a certain strategy, which is developing a plan of how to meet our media objectives. And finally, there is an evaluation. It's very important to understand that research is the basis of good media planning. In fact, research is a basis of good advertising. Research and advertising actually go hand in hand, and the research is something which is a continuous process, which means right from the time that you go and take a pitch, you ask for a business, you have to be a well-researched agency. And then as you make your plans, as you make your strategies, as you make your products, the research and being in touch with what is happening, especially today's world when, the digital has taken over and everything is changing by a minute, a sound research background is what makes any plan a successful plan. So coming back to our media plan, this is where we are going to definitely be looking at the consumer in a detail in certain aspects that are important for the planning. We are going to look at the market condition. It's very important to understand how the brand is situated in a particular market, what the competition is doing. Understanding the competition is an essential aspect of any media planning. And then to understand that within a market, what is the brand's penetration? What is it that the brand actually has chosen at its geographical area? All these parts become an important process of understanding, of research that a media planner has. And every time the new client comes, this knowledge only gets further and further reinforced. So because it's a research-based specialization, it is built over the years. So in identifying this particular target market, as we call it in the media language, the target market this is where I'm focused to send out my media messages. And that target market has to essentially fall in line with what the marketing objective is. For example, if a tea company or say Pepsi or Colgate have decided to kind of go in a certain geographical area, which means geographical area could be in terms of north, south, east, west. I'm looking at these markets, or it can go horizontally where it says I'm going to get only to the metro cities, or I'm going to go to the towns now, B-level towns, or am I going to go into the rurals or the interiors itself? So you see, your market segmentation in that sense is not only in terms of vertical, it's also horizontal that you are going to look at. So all these market segmentations that come out of the marketing objectives are followed in media plan also. And then you have to understand how these geographical localities are different from each other in terms of people's habits of actually using the brand, habits of using the medium through which you are going to talk to them, and any other cultural, social sort of idiosyncrasies that are going to affect both the brand usage as well as the media viewing. So this entire thing is how you fix your target market, and then you are able to set out your plans. Some of the important questions to be kept in mind is, which factors are going to influence me as I'm going to make the plan? Am I going to be looking at, does religion have anything to do with it? Does income have something to do with it? And yes, does education have something to do with it? Absolutely. In fact, there is, in media planning, we actually have the SEC categories, which is socio-economic categories. And in that, we actually are able to identify groups, people of a certain income, people of certain income, education standard, and the houses which they live in are categorized into SEC A, SEC B, SEC C. And this is the language that the media planners use in order to simplify how they are going to be targeting the audience. So therefore, the situation analysis or the preparedness with research and understanding of a target market is something, through which the message is easily conveyed to the prospective buyers. The next step really is about the media objectives. The most important aspect of media plan is to have very clear media objectives. So whenever objectives are set anyway in any business, it is important, and it is always professed, that they should be SMART objectives. SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. I'm sure you have learned this concept before, so I'm not going to get into the details here, but I only want to flag off that from the media objective point of view, being measurable targets and being time-bound is extremely important, because remember I said it's about money. So we cannot have any media objective which is going to take a very long time to fulfill. Such a media objective will require a lot of money, which may not be something that the client has signed in for. So and again, it has to be measurable, because remember, at the last step, we are going to do the impact study. Unless we have put together a certain percentage of change that we are going to be seeing after the media plan is being implemented, you are not going to be able to assess it. Therefore, in order to put your objectives, you keep in mind certain important things. Most important, what is the purpose? What is it that I'm really trying to find out? What are the objectives of this media exercise that I'm taking in? Invariably, these are something which are going to be about reach, that I'm going to reach X number of people. It's going to be about frequency. I'm going to reach them so many times. It's definitely, who am I reaching to? So I'm going to say, I'm going to reach people of this age group, or people of this particular habit, or people with certain markers that you are going to be targeting towards, so that you understand their media habits, and then you look at your strategy in such a way that it hits that specific group. So as an example, to understand this, increase of X number of exposures, which is your frequency, among 13 to 24 age group, which is your target audience, increase by 3%. So what I'm trying to say is that if the advertisement as of now was reaching somebody in this particular age group, twice a week, I am going to increase it, say, by 3%. And I am going to see that there is more exposure, and then I am going to achieve what I am setting out to achieve. So everything gets broken down to measurable targets, which are to be done in a time-bound fashion, so that we can see the results to judge if this particular strategy worked well or not. So another example could be, so if your marketing objective, for example, Pepsi's marketing objective is to get new consumers. Fine. So I have my media objective then is to reach out to new group of consumers, and I'll sort of give it a target. I'll say 5% reach. I'll reach out to 5% new markets, and that is what is calculable, and I go with my message to that new group. For example, if Pepsi is something that is doing very well, say in one geographical area or in one strata, which is cities or smaller towns, then I'm going to identify farther away rural audience. So I'll be very specific about looking at a certain age group in a certain area, and now I'm going to suggest the medium through which I'm going to reach them, and this reach is going to be for this X number of people, right? So media objectives, most important thing, have to be very, very quantifiable so that the effect can be immediately understood. Strategies, therefore, are completely determined by what your objectives are all about. Now, while media strategies are going to be, very particular to the brands that we are talking about. So, if we are talking to Pizza Hut, it's going to be a very different strategy from talking to, say, Hamam soap, or to a Lifebuoy soap, or to durable goods like a car. So all the strategy is going to be determined by what the brand and brand's marketing strategy is. However, there are some elements that you have to keep in mind. 4 elements really have to be considered when you are making a media plan. Number 1, the media mix, which is to say, with a limited number of, resource, the budget being whatever it is, X number, one has to take this call whether all the money has to be put, say, only in digital medium, or do I put all the money in one, broadcast, or only print, or should I divide it among 3, 4 or as many mediums that I may think, based on my understanding through my situation analysis, that I'm going to scatter it. Research and good sense tells us it's always good to go for a mix, never to concentrate on one particular medium, although there are exceptions to that also, especially in today's digital world, when a lot of brands are now moving towards only digital presence. And in our experience of last year, when COVID shut everything down and only digital media grew by 15%, it made a lot of sense for all the brands to be rushing towards the digital media. So as I said, it all depends on a situation, but largely at a theoretical level, it makes a lot of economic sense to be traveling through various mediums. So that is the mix which you have to justify in terms of your media objectives. Next is the usage of this medium, which means how can one medium be leveraged to do a couple of things. One, to create awareness, or even to build a intent. So these are different roles that media would have, or various objectives media would have, that are expected to be done through one medium, have more than one usage of a particular medium. Then, of course, the geographical allocation, we have already talked about that it's very important to go horizontal, vertical, or geographically in a different markets in order to get your market base stronger. And fourth thing, of course, as I said, is the scheduling. Scheduling is now the second step of implementation. So if you have, for example, thought that I'm going to go the digital way, then you have to say digital way, how many platforms? 2 platforms? How many, what is the time? So you schedule it in such a way that you are able to quantify what you're going to get out of it and how are you going to measure it, and the impact is something that comes out clear. So on the basis of these 4 pillars of media mix, usage of media, geographical allocation and scheduling of the strategy, we get down to customizing the strategies. Strategies, as I said, can be several because they are going to be dependent on the marketing strategy of that particular brand. However, over the years, there is some sort of benchmarks that are drawn when we are looking at a client's requirement. One of the important things that happens is to actually look at the competitor benchmark, which is to say, if your brand is not the leader and is trying to capture more market, then it makes a lot of sense to see what is the market leader doing? What is their media plan all about? And vis-a-vis that, try to either say that this is what I'm going to replicate, this is what is lacking in my approach, and that is a successful approach. Mind you, only from the media point of view, because positioning cannot be the same. Positioning, brand positioning, as we understand, is a creative concept and the marketing concept, that cannot be same. But your media reaching out to the market with choice can be similar. So that can be one strategy, or the other strategy would be to go absolutely in the opposite direction, which means if my competitor has already found sort of, a place, I do not go there, but I capture another market altogether, and I am the first person and I get the advantage of the first person entrant in a new market. So these kind of strategies are something that the media designs and the media takes forward. It is also a well-known rule that in the print media, for example, you have to publish at least 3 times to get the attention of a target audience. Now, this is what we are talking about, the frequency. What is the frequency of an ad that is going to give us results? The formula says thrice is when you get the attention of your consumer. In radio and television, what is most important? The timing. The timing is everything. For example, if the ad is running after midnight, your probability of it being seen is much less. Unless, of course, you are actually looking at that target segment. For instance, you're looking at businessmen who travel during the night. Or you're looking at, the youngsters today who do catch up with a lot of television viewing or digital viewing after midnight. So if you're trying to reach a housewife who typically is off her television or off her media by 10 or 11 in the night, you're not going to catch her attention at that point of time. Similarly, in traditional media, this is, of course, we are talking about the media which is like, broadcast and digital. But there is traditional media, like you have the radio, or you have the outdoor, you have the public transportation. So that kind of traditional media would have its own rules, would have its own benchmarks that have been set over these 75 years and more of advertising and media being alive in India. Next, we come to evaluation and feedback, which is the last but the most important part of media planning. Why? Because this is when you come to know whether your plan actually worked, whether the strategy used actually was effective. And this evaluation is normally done through independent agencies. But again, today in digital time, this has been very, very successful, and it has been something that the technology has taken us into another generation altogether, where we have live feed. Now impact studies happen almost like we talk. From the Google analytics, we can search and get figures, data in real time. We don't have to wait for that. And this evaluation and this feedback and this kind of success or failure is something that always feeds back into the research that we do at the time of situation analysis. For example, when we are trying to understand for brand X, we always keep in mind what its competitor had successfully done or what the competitor had failed at. Similarly, what this particular brand was able to achieve or was not able to achieve. Still better, what we can also have evaluation studies and feedback knowledge from another brand in the same category in a different market that could have learned new things, different things. So having said this, we understand that media plan is an ongoing cycle, like a planning cycle, where we start with understanding the situation of the market, of the consumer, move out to having crisp, objective, measurable media objectives, which we fulfill with a strategy. Strategy is often driven by doing an analysis based on our understanding of the market, and then when you set out that strategy in terms of implementation, there is a feedback mechanism which fills in and tells you whether this plan worked or it did not work. Moving further, I would like to spend a little time on media planning, as in media planning 2.0, which is the digital marketing today. The digital marketing has changed almost the entire situation of this market, of our business today. We see that a lot of digital marketing is something that has led to change in several ways. One of the important ways in which it has affected media and media planning is that budget no longer seems to be such a big issue. The budgeting in social media, in digital land, is much cheaper, much manageable for the clients on the digital platform, as it has been in other medium. Therefore, that is one important thing to be kept in mind. When you are doing your digital media planning, it is very important to understand that a lot of these online campaigns that are required now, which may or may not be a part of the creative plans that have come forth, these are plans that are made even before the creative is made, which means that in the digital media space, it is the planners who understand right in the beginning how and where they have to reach the market, and basis that understanding, new creatives are being developed. So there is this whole change in the way, in the sequence, or in the plan that campaigns were done in the digital space now, where simultaneously media planning and creative development has started happening. Number two, the digital tools like the Google Analytical I was talking about, that has revolutionized the research itself, because now you have real-time data coming and which is immediately analyzed, and as a result, things keep changing by the second. As soon as figures are updated, a lot of thinking, strategizing has to be redone all over again. So in your other videos, you would have talked about the SMOs and the SMMs and the SEOs, and I'm not going to get into the details there, but these are now the tools which are changing, making a big change in the media planning for the digital platforms, because they tell you how to increase the qualitative, quantitative traffic. These tell you how to do optimization of your presence, and media planning has to therefore keep all these aspects and factors in mind when it is doing its planning. Again, when it comes to identifying the target audience, because of the media shift, now we do look at the audiences from the point of view of their digital consumption. How savvy are they on which aspect of digital media is another important thing to be kept in mind. Last but not the least, digital planning has reiterated the need and the importance of continuous research, because, as I said, everything keeps moving on minute to minute basis, and the minute data goes away from one aspect that was understood to another, there is always a change in the strategy, there is always a change in the way the brand wants to approach and talk to its consumer. So that is another big thing that has been happening. Before I end, I would like to discuss some key points, and here they are. Media planning, we have learned, media planning should go hand in hand with the marketing and creative messages. It should identify the media habits of the target audience of the brand. It is important to analyze and make selection of the right media channels to ensure that the advertising messages reach the right people at the right time. Media planning ensures that the communication messages are in sync with the overall objectives and the right kind of messages are delivered to the consumers. Media planning again helps to invest judiciously, and the right channel is chosen in different media so that the spend of advertising funds are judicious. Media planning is mostly about correct timing and placement of the advertisement with, as I said, frequency that can be judiciously budgeted. Planning requires selection of most cost-effective mix of media, a combination which ensures that the objectives which are of marketing as well as media are achieved. That's all I have for you today. I hope the lesson was to your understanding and liking. Thank you.